Hi, and welcome back to my channel, Quest for Faith with Brian. And today we're going to be doing a doozy. We're going to be talking about excommunications. We're going to talk about some craziness with accusations of adultery, a double papal election, a lot of stuff around the Council of Rome. Not even to mention the schisms and the heretics that we're going to be talking about during this video. And so this is part two of the history of the Bible, and it's kind of crazy and exciting because I think for me, a lot of times when you're looking back in history, we're just looking at the dates and the events and why was this important, and you don't really get a lot of the backstory. But before we dive into that, I just want to kind of do a quick review of my last video. Um, and that video, I walked through what I thought was Martin Luther's best case for removing the Apocrypha or creating the Apocrypha, because, right, he didn't remove the books out of the Bible. That was Protestants in the 1800s that did that. I've gone over that so many times. If you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you've heard me say that. So, anyways, and his claim was that the Jews in Germany don't have it in their Bible. So why should we? But the issue that I found looking back historically is that I'm fine with that if the Jews' canon was closed before Jesus. And we find clearly that it's not. And I went through all of that, kind of what happened after the fall of the temple, how the Pharisees were the only ones left, and they were the ones that were kind of had to take Judaism from a sacrificial religion to a religion of the book. And so that kind of leaves us into the early 300s is when they think canon was finally starting to get solidified for Judaism, which leads us today to talking about the Council of Rome. So one of the things that I always like to do is figure out who the main characters, and that's kind of where it gets exciting. Who are the main characters for the Council of Rome before we kind of dive into the details of what they actually were talking about. And the main character was Pope Saint Damasus the First. He was a pretty prolific pope. A lot of things happened during his papacy, not just the Council of Rome, which was a significant marker, which we're going to talk about. But he was elected pope in 366 after the death of Pope Liberius. Now, evidently, Pope Liberius was not a fan of Saint Damasus, and he had done some papal writings speaking out against him. And there was a group of Arians. Yes, the Arian heresy was still alive and well at this point, even though we're in the what 30 plus years after the Council of Nicaea, um, and they didn't like him, and so they decided that they were going to elect their own pope, and they picked a deacon named Ursinus, is how I think it, Ursinus. They decided to pick him to be pope, even though Saint Damasus was elected by the majority of the leadership of the church at that point. So they whisked him away, did an irregular consecration as pope. This just all heck broke loose. So the supporters of Saint Damasus attacks the supporters of Ursinus at the Basilica of Liberius, which is now called the Basilica of Saint Mary Major. And 137 people died, and this is a basilica today. So it's a really beautiful basilica. It looks amazing. I mean, obviously, this is some renovations. I doubt it looked like this in 366, but nevertheless, um, so yeah, there was this pitched battle that went on. They think it could be more, could be less, but around 137 people died. The Roman emperor has to step in and sort everything out because of the violence. Ursinus ends up getting banished to College, which I think is France. Later, he's allowed to come back and live the rest of his life in Milan, or yeah, I want to say Milan. And but he always claimed that he was a pope. So he is one of the first anti-popes in history. Um, but the attacks and the troubles for Saint Damasus doesn't stop there. Followers of Ursinus end up accusing him of adultery in 378, 12 years later, and bring it to court in not in the Catholic Church, but within the actual civil courts for the Roman Empire. Saint Damasus is put on trial, and all charges are dropped. He's innocent of this crime. Then a bunch of bishops, I think it said 44 bishops, met and then excommunicated the accuser of Saint Damasus. Which, who knows? I don't have the details on that. Why he was technically they were excommunicated, but they were. The next big thing on the list that happened was in 382, the Council of Rome happened, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But he was a monster of a pope. He did so many things defending the faith against schisms, heresies, all over the Roman Empire. You have the Council of Constantinople in 380, which is one of the first councils that starts officially recognizing Rome as the head of the church. Under his papacy, you also have, in that same year, you have Christianity is officially the religion of the Roman Empire. He has a bunch of building projects. He started the Vatican archives. So there's a lot that happened while he was Pope, and he died in 384. So the next main character is Saint Jerome. Now, everybody knows about Saint Jerome. A lot of Protestants like to point to Saint Jerome as, see, they didn't think that it was. He didn't think that these were canon either when we're talking about the Apocrypha books. He was the first one to use that term that we have. But I think the history on that, I think he does change his mind. And I'm going to see if I can get Gary Michuta on my channel. He did a great video talking about Jerome and changing his mind. I'm going to see if I can get him on for the last video in this series to talk about Jerome, and kind of go through why he puts forth the case to change, that Jerome did change his mind on those on the Deuterocanon books. But anyways, Saint Jerome was born in 340. He was baptized in 360. He started studying theology in Terra and Aquila. In 380, 381, somewhere in there, he was ordained a priest in Antioch. He traveled to Rome in 382, and that is where he slides into the story. Jerome becomes a secretary for Pope Saint Damasus the First, and it is there where he is commissioned to write, to translate the Bible into Latin, and creating the Vulgate Bible, which was the common translation for thousands of years. The Vulgate was the go-to, and so this is the council that he was appointed to do that. After Damasus's death, Jerome left Rome, and when you read about it, it's basically he was rubbing everybody's feathers and pushed people the wrong way. And so after the Pope died, he kind of skedaddled out of Rome. He made his way through Antioch, went down to Alexandria in Egypt, and then finally reached Bethlehem, and where he lived the rest of his life. And in Bethlehem is where most of his translation work, actually all of it. Well, he did some of it in Rome, but most of it was done there in Bethlehem. And if you didn't catch my video over Christmas with Steve Ray, Jerome actually lived and translated most of the Bible in the cave in where Jesus was born in Bethlehem. So that's kind of a cool tidbit there. If you haven't seen that video, there's a link. It'll be right over there if you want to check that out. So on to the main event. Council of Rome, 382 AD. So it was held by obviously by Pope Saint Damasus the First, and obviously that's why he's the main character in this. Yes, they did discuss biblical canon at this point, but they also had ecclesiastical politics they discussed in this, doctrinal affirmations. It wasn't just canon. And I was listening to a Protestant historian, and he was trying to make the case that this council and the two others that talk about the canon, Carthage and Hippo, which we're going to talk about in the next video, that they weren't really speaking from authority. They weren't trying to be authoritative like they had the authority over other Christians. And when you read the decrees that came from this, I don't think you can make that statement. Um, so just to name a few, I pulled a few out here that I got, and I'll put a link to the website I got this off of, so y'all can go through and read all of them. There's a ton. This is just four out of the a bunch that are in there. But we anathetize Urias and Eunomius, who with equal impunity though in different terms, declare that the Son and the Holy Spirit are creatures. If anyone does not say that the Son was begotten of the Father, that is, of divine substance of him himself, he is a heretic. If anyone says that because he was established in the flesh when he was on earth, he was not in heaven with the Father, he is a heretic. If anyone does not say that the Holy Spirit ought to be adored by every creature just as the Son and the Father, he is a heretic. Uh, these kind of sound authoritative, right? These don't sound like they're just kind of discussing problems, and maybe we should take a list and list out the canon. If you're calling things out for heretics, you're anathematizing, calling people to the mat. Um, this sounds very authoritative to me. So to make the claim that they weren't using their authority as leaders of the church, as especially with the papal leadership, I think that's a really hard case to make if you when you're reading this. But next, the final thing they talked about was the books of the Bible, right? So there were seven books, books of wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, Tobit, Judith, and the two Maccabees. Those are the apocrypha books, and I have them highlighted here, right? They weren't spelled out or even named the same back then. Likewise, Wisdom 1 is the book of wisdom. Ecclesiasticus, when I looked that up, like, well, where is Sirach? That is what Sirach used to be called. Uh, Jeremiah's one book with Garuth. Um, Baruch and Jeremiah used to be considered one book back in the day. And Tobias is Tobit, because Tobias is a character in Tobit. We have Judith easily spelled out there, and the Maccabees, two books. So this is the list that the Council of Rome put together in 382 to start solidifying the canon. And so, for anyone to come in and say that there was already a preconceived notion of what the list was, that's not necessarily the case. I know I watched the video on Jimmy Akin. He did a rebuttal video talking on this subject, and he brought up, man, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but a list from the mid 300s, so like 30 years prior to this, and he had a list out of books everyone was cool with, books everyone was up in the air on, and then books people weren't sure about or were talking about rejecting. So there wasn't this universal acceptance of all these books. And so the fruit of this, after this council, you had Saint Jerome be commissioned to start creating really good translations of the Bible in Latin, in the common tongue, so everybody could read and understand it. And part of the reason for this too was because not only to solidify the canon, but it was also because there was starting to be really bad translations out there, and it was an issue. So they needed to have a really good translation. And so that's why they did this. And so this was the first council to actually list this out. And this is what sparked the Council of Hippo and the Council of Carthage to actually then um, talk about the canon too during their councils. Next video, we're going to dive into Hippo and Carthage, look at those councils, who was involved in there. And Lord willing, I'll see if I can get Gary on and we can talk about Jerome and dive a little bit deeper into that. And Jerome's hesitant to say that the Deuterocanon books were canon versus later on in life, where it really does look like he completely changed his mind on that. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. Please like, share, and subscribe. Video 3 coming out as soon as I can get it put together. As you can tell, there's a lot of research in this, so be patient with me. I'm hoping this will be a faster turnaround than this video. But I do appreciate everyone that's subscribing. Please leave a comment down below if I missed something, or if there's something else around like the Council of Rome that you want to bring up. Drop it in the comments below. Talk to y'all later. Have a good